Nipsey's death has always been surrounded by tension and unanswered questions, but now, after years of silence, Snoop is finally speaking out in court.
Cause I know the truth. Ain't none of you just put me on the set, and ain't none of you gonna kick me off the set.
Word is, Snoop just snitched on Big U and even exposed his own role in the murder. But the real shock is why he chose to break his silence now. Let me break it down. Snoop's apology, no one saw coming. The courtroom went silent when Snoop Dogg dropped a bombshell nobody saw coming. In front of stunned onlookers, Snoop didn't just apologize for his past connections, he went one step further, pointing the finger at one of the most feared names in Los Angeles street politics, Big U. Yes, you heard that right. In a shocking turn, Snoop's own words linked Big U to the heated conspiracy theories surrounding Nipsey Hussle's tragic murder. And if that wasn't enough, the way he laid it all out has insiders whispering the word nobody thought would ever be attached to Snoop Dogg: snitch. Let's rewind for a second. Nipsey Hussle wasn't just another rapper. He was the pride of Crenshaw, a man who used his platform to uplift his community while keeping one foot firmly planted in the streets that raised him. But his death in March 2019 wasn't just heartbreaking. It sparked an avalanche of rumors, finger-pointing, and conspiracies. Some whispered that it was all about a street dispute. Others said there were bigger forces at play. And one name that kept surfacing again and again: Big U, Nipsey's former manager and a man whose reputation in Los Angeles carries both respect and fear. To understand why Snoop Dogg's courtroom words hit so hard, you need to understand Big U's position in all this. He wasn't just an outsider. He wasn't just a mentor. He was deeply embedded in Nipsey's rise, and later, in the fractures that came with fame and territory. Now, fast forward to Snoop. For decades, he's been more than a rapper. He's been a cultural ambassador, a businessman, a global superstar. But make no mistake, his roots are in Long Beach, in the Crip set, in the streets. That means when he speaks on a situation like this, the world listens. And that's exactly what happened when Snoop took the stand. In carefully measured words, he admitted his past mistakes. He apologized, not just to the court, but to the families, the fans, and to Nipsey's memory. But then came the part that left people frozen in disbelief. According to multiple accounts of the testimony, Snoop pointed directly at Big U's role in creating the environment that led to Nipsey's murder. For many, that sounded less like an apology and more like cooperation with authorities. And in street culture, cooperation has one ugly label: snitching. But here's where it gets wild. These courtroom words weren't floating in a vacuum. They lined up with whispers we've been hearing for years, from Nipsey's close friends to Big U's own statements on camera. Just listen to this chilling clip from one of Nipsey's closest friends, who was there the day Nipsey was gunned down.
Were you there that day?
Yes, I was. Guy rolled up, Nipsey's out hanging, signing autographs or whatever. Guy rolled up. I don't know what his intention was. As I replay it, I just replay it over and over. And I wish I could have done something differently. I wish I'd have never left his side.
That raw pain, straight from a man who lived through it, sets the stage for why Snoop's words carry such weight. Because while Nipsey's friend replayed the events over and over in his head, Snoop in that courtroom forced everyone else to replay the question: was Big U really connected to the chain of events that ended Nipsey's life? Big U, for his part, has never shied away from addressing the rumors. In fact, he confronted them head-on in interviews, insisting that people twisted the narrative. Take this clip where Big U himself clears the air about the conspiracy theories.
And I had never heard that. I had never heard the Nipsey Hussle conspiracy that Big U had that something to do with it, right? But let me get to a little deeper question. The rumor has it is that Nip came up to this guy and said, "I can't hang with you, or we can't be around because he was a rat," right?
Right.
Let me ask you a question. It's kind of harsh. Was Nipsey supposed to say that? If you're not in the streets no more, is your opinion on the streets that valid? I'm asking.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, you gotta understand it was two things. Let me ask you this, because what bothers me the most is when people say he got killed by one of his own homeboys.
Notice how he's defensive, almost frustrated that his name even got pulled into this narrative. But the streets don't forget, and when Snoop's testimony echoed those same suspicions, it poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Think about it. For years, Snoop has played both sides of the line, embracing peace, calling himself the king of Long Beach, while still throwing verbal jabs at rivals who questioned his credibility. Just listen to how he responded to people saying he couldn't come back to his own hood.
All you talking that about Snoop can't come to the hood. He can do whatever I like when I like. Second of all, you 50 years old. You can't get a job, cuz? You mad at me, cuz? 'Cause I won't help you no more?
That's not the voice of someone timid about his reputation. That's someone who knows his power, who knows how to assert dominance. And yet in that courtroom, when the stakes were higher than ever, Snoop flipped the script and essentially gave law enforcement what they wanted: names, connections, context. And let's not sugarcoat it, this move has consequences. In the eyes of some, Snoop just crossed a line that you can't uncross. But before we dive deeper into those consequences, let's pause on something that's easy to overlook: the humanity behind this. Nipsey Hussle wasn't just a rapper, wasn't just a street figure. He was a father, a son, a man with dreams of building generational wealth for his community. His friend described how Nipsey never left his neighborhood, never abandoned his roots, even when violence was always lurking nearby.
I'm gonna miss him. The world misses him. It's great what he's done for the world. I'm gonna miss his smile. I'm gonna miss him just rolling up on me. I'm gonna miss his advice. He'd give me books to read. It's just so many things I'm gonna miss about him.
That's the tragedy here. And that's why Snoop's apology and finger pointing isn't just drama. It's ripping open old wounds. Because if Snoop is telling the truth, then Big U's role is far murkier than anyone dared to admit. And if Snoop exaggerated, or worse, fabricated, to save his own skin, then he just threw gasoline on a fire that could burn his own legacy. Either way, the fallout is explosive. But that wasn't the end of it. Because just when people thought the drama had peaked, another twisted moment from the courtroom left everyone stunned. Let's tell you about it. When Snoop pointed the finger at Big U. When Snoop Dogg walked into that courtroom, most people expected a performance. They thought he would flash the same charisma he's shown for 30 years, charm the public, and walk out untouched. They thought this was just another celebrity trial moment, another chance for Snoop to project the image of a man who has nothing to hide. And at first, that's what it looked like. His voice softened, his posture was humble, and he started with something nobody had expected from him in decades: an apology. He spoke about his past, about the damage that had rippled from his music, his words, his influence. He spoke about how glorifying gang culture had helped fuel violence that scarred Los Angeles for generations. It was the kind of confession that sounded like closure, as though he had decided to finally bury the persona of Snoop Dogg the gangster and present himself as Snoop Dogg the elder statesman. But what followed next was not closure, it was an opening, a wound ripped wide in front of everyone. Because after the apology came the accusations, and the name that tumbled out of his mouth was one nobody expected to hear in that setting: Big U. The silence that followed in the courtroom was deafening. It wasn't just that Snoop had apologized, it was that he had placed blame, and not on a stranger, not on an outsider. He had put it on someone from within. People who live by the codes of the street knew instantly what had just happened. To the uninitiated, it might sound like Snoop was just speaking his truth. But to those who know the rules, what Snoop did was far more dangerous. He crossed into the realm of testimony. He broke the golden rule: no names, no cooperation, no betrayal of the brotherhood, even if those brothers are flawed. Why does that word carry so much power? Because in Los Angeles, especially in the neighborhoods that birthed both Nipsey Hussle and Snoop Dogg, credibility is everything. You can have money, you can have fame, but if your credibility is gone, you are nothing. The streets run on respect, and respect cannot coexist with snitching. That is why Snoop's words didn't land as just an apology. They landed like a nuclear bomb. The reason Big U's name is so charged is because of who he was to Nipsey. In Nipsey's early years, Big U wasn't just a manager. He was the bridge between the streets and the industry. He provided protection, guidance, and credibility. But relationships built in that world are rarely simple. They are a mix of mentorship, control, love, and fear. And when Nipsey rose beyond the streets, carving a path as a businessman, an investor, and a visionary, tensions naturally surfaced. Nipsey no longer needed a street guardian in the same way. Independence was both his strength and his risk. That space between him and Big U became the breeding ground for rumors. When Nipsey was murdered, those rumors erupted like wildfire. Some believed it was simply the tragic act of a man consumed by jealousy. Others whispered about deeper betrayals, about politics and power moves that set the stage for his death. Big U's name began to circulate not because of evidence, but because of suspicion, because of the simple truth that in the streets, people often believe the knife comes not from the enemy, but from the hand you once trusted. Big U has never shied away from responding to these suspicions, though his words reveal just how much the accusations weigh on him. He rejects the premise entirely, flipping it by saying the killer wasn't truly family, not truly one of them. It is a way of trying to detach himself from the implication, to say, don't blame me, don't blame us, because the man who pulled the trigger was never really part of the circle. Yet, as much as Big U denies, the rumors stick. And when Snoop Dogg, of all people, gives that suspicion fresh breath in a courtroom, it doesn't just stick, it hardens. The weight of Snoop's accusation also comes from the complicated bond between Big U and Nipsey, which Big U himself has admitted was not always peaceful. Asked about conflicts, Big U admitted that disputes were inevitable, even between brothers. He downplayed one widely discussed incident as nothing more than a family matter.
there was some sort of situation that happened, some sort of shootout with you, Nipsey, LAPD, something?
No, that was what, 7 years ago? It wasn't no shooting. It wasn't no shooting. It was a family dispute. That's my little brother, you know what I'm saying? I love him to death.
Explaining, those words sound protective, but they also underline the tension. In the street world, family disputes are not like family disagreements at the dinner table. They are volatile and sometimes deadly. They reveal the messy blend of love and rivalry, where someone you call a brother one day might be viewed as a liability the next. And that duality is why, despite Big U's insistence, many have never stopped wondering if there was more to Nipsey's story than what appeared on the surface. Snoop's role in reigniting those doubts cannot be overstated. For years, he has embodied the balancing act of being both a peacemaker and a Crip. He could sit with Martha Stewart in one moment and then remind Long Beach in another that he still ran his set. That ability to exist in both worlds is what gave him authority. Yet when he stood in that courtroom and put Big U's name out loud, he shattered the illusion that he could navigate both worlds without consequence. To some, it was bravery. To others, it was betrayal. And betrayal in Los Angeles is remembered forever. The label of snitch is not a throwaway insult. It is a scarlet letter. It does not fade with time or get erased by success. In the neighborhoods where Snoop and Nipsey came from, being labeled a snitch means your word is worthless, your history is rewritten, and your place in the culture collapses. The rules are cruel, but they are enforced with a ferocity that has kept them alive for decades. And this is what makes Snoop's words so devastating. It doesn't matter whether what he said about Big U was true. It doesn't matter whether his intent was to honor Nipsey by speaking the truth or to protect himself from further scrutiny. The reality is that the community heard it as testimony, and testimony is snitching. Now the fallout is unavoidable. Big U is back in the defensive posture, once again trying to remind people that there is no paperwork, no evidence tying him to Nipsey's murder. His voice in those clips is both tired and defiant, like a man who has said the same thing too many times but knows he has to keep repeating it. For Nipsey's fans, the pain is fresh again, the wound reopened by Snoop's words. And for Snoop, the reputation he spent decades cultivating may now be rewritten in a single word: snitch. This is the tragedy of the courtroom moment. What could have been remembered as an act of humility, as a chance for Snoop to apologize and rise above the mistakes of the past, will instead be remembered as the day he crossed the line. It will be remembered as the day Snoop Dogg pointed at Big U. It will be remembered as the day Snoop Dogg pointed at Big U and gave the streets something they will never forget. How court testimony reignited old wounds. The ghost of Nipsey Hussle has never left Los Angeles. Even years after his murder, his name still carries an energy that silences crowds, a presence that feels alive every time his music blasts through car speakers on Crenshaw Boulevard. He wasn't just another rapper gunned down in a cycle of violence. He was a symbol of what could have been, of what was possible when someone from the neighborhood didn't just escape but reinvested, building something lasting for the next generation. And that's why Snoop Dogg's courtroom words hurt so deeply, because they didn't just accuse Big U, they dragged Nipsey's memory back into a storm of betrayal, conspiracies, and old wounds that never healed. Nipsey's last day has been recounted by those closest to him, and each telling feels like reopening a wound that will never close. To understand the reaction, you have to understand what Nipsey represented. He was the rare artist who refused to abandon his roots, who stayed in the neighborhood that raised him even when success gave him the option to leave. He bought property in Crenshaw, he opened businesses, he hired people from his block. To fans, that was heroism, proof that you could make it without selling out. But to those who understood the streets, it was also dangerous. Staying meant exposure. Staying meant that the same loyalty you showed your block could one day be turned against you. Nipsey knew it, and yet he stayed. That statement is haunting. Nipsey believed his duty was to remain, even though he knew violence followed him everywhere. And that's the tragedy. The very loyalty that made him beloved also made him vulnerable. So when Snoop pointed the finger at Big U, it wasn't just an accusation against one man. It was a suggestion that the loyalty Nipsey showed to his circle may have been the very thing that destroyed him. When Nipsey Hussle was gunned down in front of his Marathon clothing store in March 2019, Los Angeles went into mourning. But what followed in the days and weeks after his death proved that Nipsey's impact reached far beyond Crenshaw and Slauson. The tributes that poured in from neighbors, from fans across the globe, and from the highest levels of politics and entertainment cemented his status as more than just a rapper. He was remembered as a community builder, a visionary, and a man who lived with purpose. One of the most powerful tributes came in the form of his memorial service at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. The arena, usually reserved for championship parades and superstar concerts, was transformed into a sanctuary of grief and celebration. More than 20,000 people gathered under its roof to honor him, and the service was broadcast live to millions more. Former President Barack Obama sent a letter that was read aloud to the crowd, describing how Nipsey's story of working to give back to his community was an inspiration not just to Los Angeles, but to America. Those words carried weight because they reflected exactly how fans saw him, an artist who stayed loyal to his roots when he could have left them behind. The service was filled with raw emotion. Nipsey's partner, actress Lauren London, delivered a heartbreaking speech about the love they shared and the legacy he left for their children. His mother spoke with grace, urging the crowd to see beyond the violence and to remember her son as a man of light. Friends and collaborators like Snoop Dogg and YG shared memories that painted Nipsey not as a distant superstar, but as a brother, a friend, and a fighter. The atmosphere swung between tears and applause, between mourning what was lost and celebrating what he had built. Outside the Staples Center, thousands more gathered in the streets, filling blocks with murals, candles, and flowers. Car caravans drove through South LA, blasting Nipsey's music, their windows painted with tributes like "The Marathon Continues." Local artists began painting massive portraits of Nipsey on neighborhood walls, turning him into a permanent fixture of the city's landscape. These murals weren't just art, they were declarations that his presence would live on. Around the world, tributes echoed the same sentiment. At NBA games, players wore jerseys with Nipsey's name or number. Fellow musicians honored him at concerts and award shows. Social media flooded with stories from fans who had met him, describing moments of kindness and generosity that rarely make headlines. People spoke not only about his music, but about the way he invested in his community, opening businesses and creating opportunities for others. The community's reaction was explosive because everyone understood what Snoop had risked. He had broken the code. In Los Angeles, the rule is simple. No matter what, you don't cooperate. You don't name names. You don't put blame on someone publicly, especially not in front of the system. The word for that is snitching, and it is the most poisonous word in the streets. It doesn't just cut your ties, it erases your credibility. And credibility for men like Snoop is currency. The emotional fallout stretched far beyond the courtroom. Fans took to social media to vent their confusion and anger. Some said Snoop had finally spoken the truth, that too many powerful men hide behind silence while the community suffers. Others said he had destroyed his credibility forever, calling him a hypocrite for claiming to represent the streets while breaking the very code that defines them. Nipsey's family was caught in the middle. For them, the tragedy was personal long before it was public. They weren't thinking in hashtags or headlines. They were living the raw pain of losing a son, a brother, a father, and a partner. To the outside world, Nipsey had become a symbol, a figure in debates about loyalty, betrayal, and the street code. But to his loved ones, he was simply Ermias, the boy they raised, the man they shared dinners and inside jokes with, the father whose absence left a permanent void in the lives of his children. What made it even more unbearable was the way his death never seemed to find peace. Every new accusation, every rumor spread online, and every conspiracy theory whispered on street corners reopened the wound. Instead of being able to mourn quietly, they were forced to relive the loss through the lens of speculation and suspicion. His name became entangled in narratives that had nothing to do with who he really was, turning their grief into a spectacle for the world to dissect. For Lauren London, his longtime partner, the loss was not only the death of the man she loved, but the shattering of the future they were building together. At Nipsey's memorial, her trembling words captured the heartbreak of raising their young son without him, of having to explain one day why his father was taken so soon. For Nipsey's mother, Angelique Smith, the grief carried a dual weight, mourning her child while also trying to hold her family together and provide strength to a grieving community that looked to her for guidance. His brother, Samuel Black Sam Asghedom, had to balance his own pain with the responsibility of keeping Nipsey's vision alive through the continuation of the Marathon clothing store and other business ventures. For Los Angeles itself, the moment was symbolic. Nipsey had once stood as proof that the cycle could be broken, that a man could rise above violence while still staying rooted in his neighborhood. His murder proved the cycle was not so easily escaped. And now, Snoop's testimony proves something else, that even those who survive long enough to become legends cannot escape the weight of the code. The streets don't forget, they don't forgive. And when the word snitch is whispered, it becomes permanent. Whether you're a young hustler on the block or a superstar with global fame, the rules are the same. Once the label sticks, it can bury you. And so the question remains, hanging heavy over the West Coast like a storm cloud. Did Snoop's words change the narrative forever, finally forcing the culture to confront uncomfortable truths about loyalty and betrayal? Or did he just bury himself deeper, trading his credibility for a moment of honesty that the streets will never forgive? The ghost of Nipsey Hussle lingers over that question. His legacy lives on in the music, in the businesses, in the murals painted on walls across Los Angeles. But his ghost also lives in the code, in the conversations about loyalty, betrayal, and the dangers of speaking names out loud. And until that question is answered, Nipsey's ghost will haunt not just Snoop Dogg, not just Big U, but the entire city that raised them. So what are your thoughts on Nipsey's murder and Snoop Dogg's courtroom apology? Do you think his words finally revealed the truth, or did they just add more confusion and pain to Nipsey's legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below and click on the card on screen for more.